Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy, presented by BetFred. Today's video, getting into the must start and sit wide receivers for week 6 of fantasy football. Quickly, before we get to these players, if we learned anything from Thursday Night Football, it is that the Bears, although they are a terrible team and I think a terrible defense, it's hard to be playing any guys against them, especially from the receiver perspective. Just too few plays. That game was terrible. I'm glad we're on to Sunday here and getting into the entire slate, which includes a great Bills-Chiefs game that should be in prime time. I can't believe we got to watch the Broncos on prime time again on Monday. But if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed, and as well, comment down below. Happy to help out with as many start-sit questions as you guys have. Let's get to the matchups, starting with Vikings, Dolphins. I'll be keeping an eye on a lot of these. These injury reports are massive. I've been scrolling through injuries, whether it's fantasy relevant players, whether it's defensive players. There's a lot to get to, so bear with me. I might miss a few things, or I might take a bit of time here getting through each matchup. But starting with the Dolphins offensively here, Skylar Thompson going to be a quarterback. That makes this receiver position very tough. Although the Vikings have boasted one of the league's best run defenses, so maybe the Dolphins will put Skylar Thompson to use here. But Jalen Waddle is someone I probably don't want to be playing this week. He's a player that's definitely reliant on volume and receptions. We've seen that with Tua playing. They have gone to that heavy pass volume. But in a game here with Skylar Thompson at QB, the only receiver or pass catcher I'm really willing to play would be Tyreek Hill. He's more explosive, can create plays with his legs after the catch. I'm sure they'll be looking to do that. So I would play him, but I'd consider him a wide receiver 2 for this week. On the Vikings side of things, excellent matchup. We're looking at a Dolphins team that has one of the worst coverage grades in the NFL, 32nd in passing DVOA. So an excellent matchup for all Vikings pass catchers, guys like Irv Smith, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Even if you're in a big bye week issue, you could play KJ Osborne in this matchup. But it is an easier matchup for the Vikings. But at the same time, like, the Dolphins have the league's best run defense, so I would think they're going to need to throw the ball in order to win this game and stay in this game. All right, let's go to the next one here. I've got Patriots, Browns next up. The Browns are a team that are dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. The Patriots, though, also dealing with plenty of injuries of their own. Looks like a lot of these guys will be available, but I was looking at a Denzel Ward that looked like he might miss this game as well. The Browns defense just hasn't been anywhere near as good as I thought it was going to be this year. It's pretty much middle of the pack in terms of coverage, one of the worst or the worst against the run. So Patriots side of things, Jacoby Myers is someone I can play regardless of the quarterback, whether it's going to be Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. Otherwise, I'm probably steering clear of the rest of these options. I do think they will put a heavy focus on running the ball because the Browns cannot stop the run right now. Offensively for the Browns, Amari Cooper is someone I do have a bit of a lower ceiling on this week. I would try to avoid, but I think for a lot of us with bye weeks now coming, he's a guy you do have to play. Just with the Patriots running the football, it will limit the amount of plays, much like I just mentioned with the Bears on Thursday night. Like, there's not going to be a lot of plays in this game. Both teams lean on the run. It makes Cooper, even though he does have himself established as the number 1 option, a little bit tougher to go to this week. All right. 49ers, Falcons. The 49ers dealing with some injuries of their own. Javon Kinlaw. We saw Mosley out for the season. Arik Armstead. I saw Jimmy Ward isn't practicing. So could the Falcons move the ball through the air here? Maybe. But again, the 49ers have the best coverage grade, 90.4. They're 6th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. This is a tough matchup for the Falcons, who look to be throwing the ball quite a bit less lately. Not having the volume for a Drake London or a Kyle Pitts can be really tough. But these injuries here do open up an opportunity for them. I'd be looking to sit Drake London this week, quite frankly. The 49ers are a fantastic defense, just schematically as well. They can have guys step in and make plays. Still have Charvarius Ward out there, so it's going to be tough for Drake London. So I would be trying to sit him. On the 49ers side, the Falcons have that number 1 option, that top option in A.J. Terrell, but otherwise, the pass rush is just non-existent completely. So there is an opportunity here for Jimmy Garoppolo to move the ball through the air. The Falcons, 27th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So I think guys like Brandon Ayuk, like, of course, Deebo Samuel, but Brandon Ayuk is someone that I would be looking to play this week against the Falcons. All right, Buccaneers, Steelers. Let's get to our BetFred Boost for Sunday. This is where it starts. I am loving the over in this game. Absolutely loving the over. Over 45 points. Buccaneers dealing with tons of injuries on the defense. Sean Murphy-Bunting not practicing. Akeem Hicks not practicing. William Golston not practicing. Carlton Davis limited. Those are massive, massive problems for the Bucs secondary. I know it's one of the best units in the NFL. They're first in passing DVOA. But if they don't have a pass rush here against the Steelers, and without Akeem Hicks and William Golston, they really won't. And then, the Sean Murphy-Bunting injury, the Steelers and Kenny Pickett could have a chance to move the ball through the air. So I really like this over in this game because both of these teams are top 10 in passing play percentage and top 10 in plays per game in terms of pace. Seconds per play, they're both top 10. So this game could be a little bit faster than people think, and perhaps the Buccaneers defense isn't as good as it's been throughout the season. So guys like Deontay Johnson, guys like George Pickens, I would be willing to play in this matchup. I know it's crazy to hear in this tough of a team, but if these guys are out, I would be able to play them. On the Bucs side, I'm looking at, Chris Godwin he didn't practice on Thursday. I am recording this Friday morning. I do think it was more of a rest thing. I think he's going to play. So he is someone I'd still, anytime he's on the field and available, I would be starting. He's going to have, 8 to 10 targets a game. The Steelers defense also banged up. I saw Cameron Sutton, Fitzpatrick, one other defensive back that are also missing practice. So that could be a problem. I like this over. And of course, with the boost over on BetFred, bet 50, get 250 when you sign up. But with this play, I'm also parlaying it with a second play, and that is Gabriel Davis under 55.5 receiving yards. We'll get to that game a little bit later as well, but I wanted to go the Isaiah McKenzie route. He looks like he's going to be available, but at BetFred, that line isn't available quite yet. It'll probably be closer to game time. So I'm looking at Gabriel Davis under 55.5 because the Chiefs are excellent at limiting explosive pass plays. Top 10 in explosive pass plays allowed. Gabriel Davis is a guy that is a low volume, high receiving total type guy. Big plays. Chiefs are excellent at limiting those. So I'm going to take his under and I'm going to parlay it with the Steelers Bucks. The boosted odds are up at BetFred, so go sign up. That link is down below in the description and get in on that. We just missed on Thursday night. 1 yard shy or 2 yards shy for David Montgomery. So let's bounce back on Sunday. All right, Bengals, Saints. The Saints and the Bengals. The Saints, let's start with in terms of injury perspective. We're looking at Chris Olave. I think he's going to be available. Surprisingly, with the way these concussions are going, it seems like everyone's automatically out the next week. But it looks like Olave, who has been practicing, should be available. And it looks like Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas are not going to play this week. Incredibly frustrating. This is a Bengals team that is fourth in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. But if Chris Olave is out there by himself, not by himself, but without those two, I'm definitely starting him. He's got great volume regardless of the quarterback, whether it's Andy Dalton, whether it's Jameis Winston. He's getting great receiving volume and great reception volume. So go and play him, absolutely. Bengals side of things. I think T. Higgins is going to miss this week. I do. It's a road game, so it does make this tough for the Bengals. They need to pick up a win here after a loss to the Ravens last week, but I don't think they're willing to risk long-term health of T. Higgins to play him. So if he is out, Tyler Boyd is someone I'd be looking to play. The Saints are 25th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position, so still a good matchup, even though the Saints are usually a really quality defense, and they are here at home. The game total is fairly low, I think 43.5, so not expecting a lot of points. But with no T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd is certainly a startable option for you. All right, Ravens-Giants. Another team, the Giants, that are dealing with injury. Wan'Dale Robinson, maybe he'll be back this week, so that could have an impact on when we talked about potential add in Darius Slayton earlier this week. The Giants going up against a Ravens defense that is 30th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position, giving up tons of explosive plays. But if I get Wan'Dale Robinson and I get Darius Slayton and I get Richie James, I don't know if I want to play these guys. I do have a little bit more respect for the Ravens pass defense than what the fantasy points indicate. So I lean against playing any of these guys. It's really just a Saquon Barkley thing here in New York. I need some more clarity here. I don't want to play any of these guys. Ravens, though, Rashad Bateman, I think he might miss. I think he's not going to be available. The Giants are much like we talked about with the Bears. This is a very methodical team that's limiting the amount of plays. They're They're not a good coverage unit. They're 24th in passing DVOA, but they're third in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, and it's because there's so few plays. So that makes Devin Duvernay, if Rashad Bateman is out, a potential play. He's a guy usually that you rely on for more of the explosive plays. He can turn 2 or 3 catches into a touchdown and 60, 70 yards. So if you're in a pinch, I think he's a better option than Darius Slayton is. But again, it's just, this is a guy that could certainly bust, just with, Mark Andrews being that more reliable option for Lamar Jackson. Jets, Packers. I think the Packers are in for a massive bounce back week. We talked about that earlier this week in the running back rankings, that I'm very high on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon this week. The Jets, though, do have the highest explosive pass play rate allowed. But Christian Watson, brother, you were in for an opportunity here to maybe break a big play, maybe score your first touchdown of the season, but he's not practicing. So I think a Romeo Doubs is the potential guy that could hit a big play. Al Lazard being that option inside the red zone for Aaron Rodgers is someone I'm definitely going to be starting as well. I think you can play Romeo Doubs in this matchup against the Jets. It'll be interesting to see where Ahmad Gardner is on the field, if there's any type of shadow coverage. I wouldn't expect it, but if either one of those guys are running into him a fair bit, could be a little bit tougher for either one of them. Jets, I'm leaning against playing any Jets wide receiver this week. Potentially, you could play Garrett Wilson. I would lean towards sitting all 3 of these guys, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, and Garrett Wilson. I was thinking about putting Elijah Moore into the BetFred parlay, but his receiving total is like 37.5. I think they're onto them here. The Packers do a great job. I think they're one of the best teams at limiting explosive pass plays. That's what Elijah Moore needs, is to be able to hit some big plays downfield. Zach Wilson usually likes to chase those plays, but I think the Jets will lean on the run game because the Packers have been terrible against the run this year. Packers, though, 8th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. The Jets pass pro has not been good, and the injuries are mounting, and the Packers have a really quality pass rush. So I'm looking to avoid that game on those wide receivers for the Jets. Jaguars, Colts. The Colts looking to get some redemption here from earlier in the season. Being at home, it looks like Jonathan Taylor could potentially play here. The Jags have a really good run defense. So either way, this could be a situation where the Colts do want to lean more on the pass. I like the Jags, though, man. The Jags are a good pass rush, just much improved. They're 9th in passing DVOA. I think Michael Pittman is the player to play here, just considering what he can do in terms of target volume and target share, nearly 30%. He's someone I will play in this matchup. But people are kind of been asking me about Alec Pierce. I would lean against playing Alec Pierce against the Jags here. Another game where I think pace is slow, not a lot of plays. Pierce has been pretty good, but I would lean more to the Michael Pittman side, of course, and try to avoid playing Alec Pierce against a pretty solid Jaguars defense. The Jags, though, do have a good opportunity here against the Colts. The Colts haven't been a great pass rush, haven't had great coverage as well, but they are 2nd in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. They've given up a lot of their yards and points to the tight end position, actually. So it makes Evan Ingram a play that I'm definitely looking to make. But as well, I don't really trust their coverage in the slot. Stephon Gilmore more likely to be outside. So I would still be playing Christian Kirk in this matchup against the Colts because their coverage unit hasn't been that great as much as the fantasy points would tell us otherwise. Okay, a big matchup here in terms of fantasy relevance in the Cardinals-Seahawks game. Let's start with the Cardinals. I love Rondale Moore this week. His receiving total at BetFred is, I believe, 44.5. That is probably one of the highest of Rondale Moore's career, and it's because this Seahawks defense has been terrible. They're 31st in passing DVOA. They have one of the worst coverage grades in the NFL. They don't have much of a pass rush. I love Cardinals this week. Ertz, Rondale Moore, Marquise Brown, all guys I'm certainly firing away on. And if you're in a really deep league, you could potentially play AJ Green in this matchup as well. Seahawks side of things, though. Cardinals, same story. They're somehow 7th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, but a 36.8 coverage rate isn't going to get it done. Pass rush isn't there either. 27th in passing DVOA. So Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, certainly must-start players this week in fantasy. No doubt about it. Panthers, Rams is up next. DJ Moore is like on the precipice of a drop. I don't know even in a game where the Rams are 28th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. I would not be playing him with PJ Walker at quarterback. This is going to be a game that is completely run by Christian McCaffrey in my mind. He will decide whether or not this team is efficient offensively, is able to score, and able to keep themselves in this game as, I believe, 10-point dogs. I'm trying to sit DJ Moore where I can. You can take solace in the fact the Rams have been pretty bad in fantasy points allowed, so maybe that's enough for you to play him. But man, it's getting bad for DJ Moore in Carolina. I hope that guy can find a way to get out of there, and hopefully they could consider moving him. Rams side of things, the pass pro has just been terrible. They're banged up too. A 47.1 pass blocking grade. That makes Cooper Kupp the most reliable and only reliable start here. The Panthers are 13th in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. They have been a pretty solid group this year. I honestly, if we're going to rank guys to start, like it would be Tyler Higbee 2, Ben Skronik 3, and Allen Robinson 4. Ben Skronik seems to have the upper hand in terms of in the ear of Matthew Stafford and being able to be somewhat reliable. Like in a DFS format, I'd probably look at Ben Skronik. He's cheaper on OwnersBox. So I lean against playing Allen Robinson this week. I do think the Rams will try to run the ball a bit, being in a pretty easy, light matchup for them that they should be able to get back on track after a loss last week. All right, big game, massive game, exciting game. Bills, Chiefs. Bills offensively, I'm probably looking to play all of these guys. I know I mentioned Gabe Davis as under on his receiving yards, but if we keep in mind that game against the Chiefs last year in the playoffs where he had 4 touchdowns. So he could still have 30, 40 yards and a touchdown and be a playable asset for you. But I love Isaiah McKenzie. McKenzie is the guy I'd play over Gabriel Davis this week. The Chiefs, I mentioned it in our running back rankings. They're too high shell, their coverage, they're opening the short part of the field to both the running backs and the slot position. They're allowing over 86 yards per game to the slot position. I believe 4 touchdowns on the year as well. McKenzie could find the end zone again this week. I love Isaiah McKenzie as a guy to start. He'll be someone I'm targeting once his line is available over at BetFred from receiving yards. They're giving up tons of receptions. I believe 8.2 receptions per game to slot wide receivers or from the slot. So absolutely a start this week for me. On the Chiefs side, the Bills are able to generate a ton of pressure. Orlando Brown has just looked terrible from the left tackle position for the Chiefs. Their pass pro has not been anywhere near the unit they were last year. So that could be a problem here against the Bills, who have an 85.6 pass rush grade. That's the best in the NFL. 5th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So you're asking me, what do I do with my receivers for the Chiefs? This is a really high point total, over 50. I'm making, in my mind, Travis Kelce is a guy I'm playing. I loved what I saw from Marquez Valdes-Scantling last week. I think he's someone that looks to be a little bit more, he's like right on par with Juju in terms of target volume, and is out there all the time. Those are 2 guys I think you can still start in this game. This game is going to be, it might not reach the point total of like 54.5 that it is. But if we get 48, 49 points in this game, there's going to be plenty to be had for 2 teams that are very, very much focused on throwing the ball as much as possible. So I would be willing to start all of these guys, even in a really deep league. Like a Mecole Hardman is not a bad play. I know he's banged up, but he still looks fantastic in terms of after the catch. Sunday night, Cowboys-Eagles, another very exciting game, but Dak Prescott not going to be starting this week. Not really that surprising. They should take their time with him with the way Cooper Rush has been playing. But the Eagles, great at limiting explosive pass plays, really good pass defense, 3rd in passing DVOA, but 19th in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. So that makes, in my mind, CeeDee Lamb, of course, a play. Do I want to go to a Michael Gallup? Do I want to go to a Noah Brown? It looks like Dalton Schultz, even with a bit of extra time, I don't know if he's going to play this week. So if he isn't available, I think you could go to Michael Gallup. But it could be a case of the Cowboys leaning a little bit more on the run game, just with the Eagles being in my mind, a better pass defense than they are run defense. A good pass rush here to get on the Cowboys in terms of giving Cooper Rush some time to make plays through the air. The Eagles side of things, the Cowboys are just an elite defense right now. They're one of the top 4 units in terms of coverage grade and a top 4 unit in terms of pass rush. This is going to be a massive test here for Jalen Hurts. I'm looking at in a division game, score is going to be low. I'm trying to, but it might be hard for you to sit Devontae Smith. I would be playing A.J. Brown, but Devontae Smith is someone I'm looking to sit just with the Cowboys and their ability to generate pressure against Jalen Hurts. I would go more to that route. Just with Devontae Smith is more the guy making like some of the bigger plays right now. So that would be where I'd be at in a game I expect to be pretty low scoring. 2 very good defenses. Speaking of good defenses, the Broncos Chargers on Monday night, giving the Broncos another primetime game. That makes the Chargers, in terms of how good the Broncos defense is, top 3 in every category that I pay attention to for fantasy: coverage grade, pass rush grade, fantasy points allowed, and DVOA. First in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. If Keenan Allen's available, which I don't think he will be, his limited practice seems to be very limited practice. I'm not playing Keenan Allen, even if he starts. I'm not playing Joshua Palmer. I think Mike Williams is still a player, regardless of matchup, that you need to start. He is the number 1 option in this offense. Herbert can move the ball against any defense in the NFL, but it does make a Gerald Everett someone that I've been going to quite a bit as a tight end option. I'd probably look to make a drop and pick someone else up to play this week, like an Evan Ingram over Gerald Everett. So Mike Williams is the only guy I'd be willing to go to here. It's going to be Mike and Eckler in this game that'll be making the plays for the Chargers. Broncos side of things, the Chargers 23rd in fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. The addition of J.C. Jackson just doesn't seem to be moving the needle for this coverage unit. Cortland Sutton, having plenty of air yards. Russell Wilson looks afraid to make a play, but Cortland Sutton is that number 1 guy. Jerry Jeudy being that option as well. Those two are still guys I would start here. Chargers defense, no, they're on the road. Chargers defense, though, just doesn't seem to be up to the task. And their pass rush, with only Khalil Mack on the edge, hasn't been as good since the departure of Joey Bosa. So I would still be looking to play both of those guys this week. All right, that's every single matchup for Week 6. Very excited for some of these, for Eagles, Cowboys, for Bills, Chiefs. So I hope you guys enjoy this week in the NFL. Again, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Go check out our friends over at BetFred. Bet 50, get 250 this weekend in the NFL. Join us as well on Twitch, 11 a.m. every Sunday morning. We're talking sports betting, we're talking fantasy, we're talking DFS. We're answering all of your questions on the Twitch channel. So come join us there, 11 a.m. That link also down below in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.